We went partway through, quite a long way through, a theme called The Way to the Beyond for the benefit of all. We're looking at a very beautiful ideal called the Bodhisattva ideal. And it's a Buddhist ideal that focuses on compassion and altruism, that we are practicing for the benefit not just of ourselves but of all beings. And in particular, we're looking at a version of the Buddhist path, the Bodhisattva path, which focuses on 10 aspects, 10 different things that a Bodhisattva will develop. So a Bodhisattva is the Buddhist practitioner who is focused on becoming enlightened for all beings. So you may not be able to see this at the back, but there's a list of 10 different aspects, and we're going through these gradually at Sangha Night on Tuesday nights. It's a list called the 10 paramitas, and the paramitas can be translated as perfections. It's also translated as a way to go beyond. So there are 10 different ways that we go beyond in our practice of altruism and compassion. We go beyond our kind of focus on ourselves, our kind of narrow, limited focus on ourselves. So for example, there's generosity, ethics. We've been looking at patience, shanti, forbearance. In the last few weeks we've been looking at virya, an Indian word called virya, which we translate as energy. And we've been looking at how we harness all our energy, how we get our energy available on the path. So we had 2 talks already. We had an introductory talk by Satyajyoti setting the context about how we work with energy on the Buddhist path. And last week we heard from 3 of us. 3 of us talked more personally about how we try and connect with our deeper energies, our deeper emotional drives, and harness all that energy for our Buddhist path. So this evening I'm going to be looking at a slightly different aspect of virya, a slightly different aspect of energy, which we're calling Vajra energy, and a figure associated with that called Vajrapani. So I'll introduce you to him in a little while. So what do we, when we say this phrase Vajra energy, what particular aspect of virya is this drawing out? So I want to return to a phrase that we used a few times when we explored Kshanti or patience or forbearance a few weeks ago. So when we talked about Kshanti, we used a phrase, we borrowed a phrase, I don't know where it comes from originally, but it's something along the lines of, grant me the serenity to accept the things I can't change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to tell the difference. So we focused in particular with Shanti on accepting the things we can't change in life and keeping robust, positive, no matter what life throws at us. But yeah, you could get a one-sided view of what the Buddhist practice, the Buddhist path is all about. You could present kind of a one-sided view of Buddhism, which is all about being calm, being passive, being serene, just kind of taking what life throws at you. That's just one aspect of Buddhist practice. There's another very important aspect of Buddhist practice, which is having the energy to change and the courage to change the things which you can change. The energy to make things happen, the energy to seize the initiative, to make things happen, to affect the world around you positively. So this is another aspect of virya, of energy, which I'm going to be looking at this evening, which we're calling Vajra energy. Yeah, so the goal of Buddhism, awakening, full awakening, enlightenment, is a state of awesome energy, tremendous, powerful energy. But also on the path to awakening, we need a heroic warrior energy to break through obstacles, inner obstacles and outer obstacles, to break through them. And not just, this is Vajra energy, the energy to overcome and defeat, conquer obstacles, and not just overcome them, but to smash through them, to break through them, to destroy obstacles. So we're using the term Vajra energy because there's a Buddhist symbol called the Vajra, which is this. This is the Vajra. And the Vajra is a weapon. It's in Indian mythology, the Vajra is a weapon. It's a diamond thunderbolt, and it's used it's thrown at opponents of the Dharma. It's used symbolically to smash through obstacles, to break through barriers, to cut through. So it's got the properties of a diamond, which will cut through anything else, and the properties of a lightning thunderbolt with tremendous energy, tremendous power. So it's a symbol of enlightenment, the enlightened state of pure energy, unstoppable energy, unbreakable energy. And Buddhists would use a symbol of the Vajra on shrines. You might see some Buddhists wearing Vajras on necklaces around their necks. The symbol of the Vajra we use to draw on, to kind of call on this Vajra energy to overcome difficulties, this heroic warrior energy that we need in life, in Buddhist practice, to overcome difficulties. And there's a figure, as I was saying earlier, there's a figure associated with the Vajra and Vajra energy, which is a figure called Vajrapani. Vajrapani means the holder or wielder of the Vajra. So there are two, but maybe more than two, there's two forms that I'm aware of Vajrapani. And the first is probably less popular, peaceful form of Vajrapani. He's a youthful figure, he's deep blue, very, very deep blue, and he very lightly holds the Vajra. The Vajra just rests, just kind of sits in the palm of his hand. He's sitting in a posture of royal ease, which kind of just very, very kind of, almost casually kind of at ease, just very lightly holding the Vajra. And I was reading Vasantra's book, Meeting the Buddhas, earlier today, and he just also said he might be familiar with a different version of Vajrapani. You might even hear his footsteps stamping, and, approaching you. So we'll come on to that version of Vajrapani in a second. But yeah, there's a peaceful version of Vajrapani, the figure that just represents all that energy of enlightenment, just at ease, contained, poised, ready to act, but just contained and at ease. So, yeah, but the figure I'm going to focus on this evening, which is probably the more popular, more exciting version of Vajrapani, is this version. So you might not be able to see, but at some point you can come and have a look if you can't see. But this version of Vajrapani is a wrathful version of Vajrapani. He's huge, he's deep blue, the same as the peaceful version. He's a deep blue colour. He's huge, he's massive, he's a massive figure, and he's got huge arms which are the size of legs, and he's got huge legs the size of tree trunks. He's just a massive, powerful figure. And his left hand is in the symbol of demon subduing gesture. And his right foot is stamping forwards, and his right hand is wielding the Vajra, ready to throw it at anything that gets in the way of enlightenment. And he's wreathed in crackling flames, surrounded by almost like a halo of crackling flames, all this energy. He's naked and blue, apart from he wears a tiger skin around his groin, and he's got a snake wrapped around him. And he wears a crown of skulls and a necklace of human skulls. And in some versions he's trampling on bodies, he's trampling on human bodies. So I'll say a little bit about some of that symbolism. And basically the rest of the talk is just going to be trying to look at in other ways, what does this symbol mean? What kind of energy is this symbol trying to communicate? What does this convey? But straight away you can, from this image you get a sense of tremendous energy, a very powerful figure, a very strong figure, almost a kind of a frightening figure, a terrifying almost figure, an awesome figure. And this represents an aspect of enlightenment, an aspect of the enlightened mind. A figure which, an energy which, in a mind that can just cut through any obstacles, cut through any difficulties, tremendous energy, powerful energy. And Vajrapani also represents an energy that will protect, stand up for the Dharma, stand up for the truth, speak out for the truth, protect it, protect what is valuable. So this form of Vajrapani is probably most commonly associated with Tantric Buddhism, Indian Tantric Buddhism. But he also appears right in the earliest scriptures of Buddhism. So in the Pali scriptures, which are usually associated with kind of lists and kind of scholarly Buddhism, Vajrapani appears in a story, an encounter between the Buddha and the young Hindu Brahmin called Ambata. So, Ambata is a youthful Hindu Brahmin. And a bit of context, basically it still continues today. The Buddha was very critical, he was outspoken about the Hindu caste system. So in Hinduism, the Brahminical system, there's a caste system where people are divided into kind of levels of worthiness, of value, depending on the family that they're born into. So some people, like the Brahmin caste, like this young man Ambata, very privileged to be born into a Brahmin family. They're the kind of highest caste, the kind of most privileged caste in Indian society. But if some people are unfortunate to be born into a different type of caste, they can have a very, very oppressed life, very, very difficult life. And the Buddha was outspoken, he was critical of this caste system. He said true nobility, what makes you a Brahmin, isn't the family you're born into, it's how you behave, it's your your moral behaviour, your ethics, that's what makes you a noble person. But anyway, the Buddha often had dialogues, had discourse with people in Indian culture, often with Brahmins, or sometimes disagreements, sometimes dialogue. And this one occasion, this young Brahmin called Ambata, there's a long discourse. This sutta takes place in the Digha Nikaya, which is a longer collection of stories. And basically Ambata was repeatedly insulting the Buddha. He was repeatedly insulting the Buddha and the Buddha's caste. He was kind of trying to refer to the Buddha in terms of the caste system, saying, well, you're from the Shakyan clan, that was the Buddha's clan, the Buddha's family, and that's a menial caste. So you should be paying homage to me. I'm a Brahmin, you should be paying homage to me. So on numerous occasions, Ambata was insulting the Buddha, just repeating this insult about the Buddha's lower caste, what he saw as a lower caste, and that the Buddha should be bowing to him, paying homage to him. And after a while, the story says that the Buddha, it's not so much he grew fed up with it, or that he was angry in any way, it's more that he could see this wasn't going anywhere, this wasn't helping anybody, this conversation wasn't helping anybody, something needed to happen to just stop these insults and stop this conversation. So the Buddha spoke to Ambata, and the Buddha, first of all, just clarified the nobility of his own clan, his own background, which was a noble background. But he also asked Ambata an embarrassing question. He said to Ambata, well, isn't it true that your clan descends from a slave girl? That they're the kind of origins of your clan, which you think is very noble. Actually, the origins are descended from a slave girl. And Ambata refused. He stayed silent. He didn't want to damage his reputation. He didn't want to answer the Buddha, so he just stayed silent. So the Buddha asked him the same question a second time, and again Ambata refused to answer. And the Buddha asked him the question a third time, and this time he warned Ambata. He said, well, traditionally, if a Buddha asks somebody a question 3 times, and 3 times they refuse to answer, then their head gets split into tiny pieces. So think carefully about whether you answer or not. So Ambata was asked this question. He looked up, and above the head of the Buddha, he saw Vajrapani. He saw Vajrapani holding a Vajra, aiming at Ambata's head, ready to split it into pieces if he didn't answer. And Ambata was terrified. He admitted the truth of his family, and he cowered for help, and he crawled under the Buddha to try and seek protection from Vajrapani. So, it's a very striking story. The story goes on. The Buddha is kind of quite kind to Ambata after that, and he kind of explains to people the noble aspects to Ambata's clan. So he's quite kind and helps him to restore his reputation a little bit. But what you get a sense from that story is, what for me it depicts is, in symbolic terms, the strength of the Buddha, the kind of quite quiet but formidable power and presence and strength of the Buddha. So you could say, I could say to you, and the story could say, the Buddha had a powerful presence, and that kind of means something. But to hear a story where you get a Vajrapani depicted over the head of the Buddha, ready to throw a Vajra at an opponent, that's a kind of symbolic, pictorial way, a kind of poetic way of trying to say the same thing. The Buddha had a very, very powerful presence, a very strong, powerful, awesome presence. So you get 2 aspects from that story. You get the kind of tremendous power of enlightenment, the energy, the strength of enlightenment, but you also get the energy, this Vajric energy of a Dharmapala, a Dharma Protector. So Vajrapani there is acting as a Dharmapala, a Dharma Protector. He's standing up for the Buddha, standing up for the values and ideals, what's most important for him. And I'll talk more about that later as well, how we can use that energy. Okay, I'm going to put the Vajra down because it's dangerous. Don't hold it for too long. Okay, so I've introduced you to Vajrapani and Vajra energy. Now I want to talk about how do we apply this energy in the Buddhist path. So if we're trying to practice the Buddhist path, the Bodhisattva path, how do we use this Vajric energy to break through obstacles, to protect the Dharma, to effect change around us? How do we seize the initiative? How do we break through? How do we use this energy? So to begin with, I want to talk about working to defeat inner obstacles, inner barriers. So, what we need is the energy of a warrior, the heroic warrior energy that will not give up, that doesn't give up. There's an aspect of virya called the energy that doesn't turn back, Once you've committed to doing something, you don't give up, you don't turn back from it. It's a heroic warrior energy. Yeah, so on the path of transformation, the Bodhisattva path, we need this heroic energy. We need the courage to change the things that we can change about ourselves. Ultimately, every habit, all of our internal habits can be changed and will be changed on the Buddhist path. If we just keep at it, if we keep going with this energy and determination, ultimately, all of our habits will be changed, all of them. And to begin with, for me, I'll talk a little bit about my own experience of this. To begin with, it all seemed quite easy. I came along to the beginner's course, I came along to the Buddhist Centre, and I started to change things, and it was really exciting. And so the first few things I tried to change seemed to just drop away. So I decided I was going to stop eating meat. And that seemed surprisingly easy. I just stopped eating meat. It was just as simple as that. I decided I wasn't going to eat meat, and that was it. I didn't eat meat again. And then shortly after that, I kind of decided to reduce alcohol, and eventually I decided I didn't want to drink alcohol anymore. I'm not saying that people have to do this. The audience was saying these are the things that came quite easily to me. They just seemed to drop away. I didn't want to do them anymore. So I kind of just adopted this kind of almost like false heroic attitude that I can do anything. I can just change anything. It's going to be really easy. I can just give up anything. But sooner or later, what will happen on the Buddhist path is you'll encounter a really deeply ingrained habit, a really resistant habit. It's a bit like a weed that you pull out of the ground and then it grows back again. It seems to grow back in lots of different places. And you pull them out and more weeds grow back. So you can seem like some of our habits seem a bit like this. They're really deeply ingrained, they're really resistant to change, these different aspects of ourselves. And each of us will have our own equivalent things that we kind of constantly fall back into that we just really wish we wouldn't. It might be drink, it might be drugs, it could just be Facebook or YouTube, it could be internet porn, it could be shopping, it could be snapping at our partner or our kids, getting angry with them. Whatever it is for you, it might be just a deeply ingrained habit, or it might even be a view about yourself, a story about yourself that you keep falling back into and you wish you didn't, that you're not good enough, or you can't do this, or you can't do that. Each of us have these deeply ingrained habits that are really resistant. And what I often do is eventually I get fed up and I think, right, I've had enough. I'm just not going to do this anymore. So I get this kind of semi-heroic attitude, this energy which is, right, I'm never going to do this again. A really good intention behind it. And for a few weeks, it goes very, very well. I feel very pleased with myself, very saintly. I'm never going to do this again. I'm a really good Buddhist. I've changed this at last. What a relief. And then something will happen, some painful experience or some disappointment or dukkha. And I find myself, before I know it, just back reaching for the same thing, back in the same habit, just back in that same familiar place again. And then I'm feeling really bad about myself because I've got Catholic upbringing, so I'm really good at being a Catholic and feeling really bad about myself. And, feeling really ashamed, I'm a really terrible Buddhist. I feel really bad about myself. And then because I feel bad, I'll reach for the same thing, whatever it is again, and feel even worse. It gets into a kind of really vicious cycle where you feel like you can't get out. And then I get fed up about it. Okay, I'm never going to do that again. So I decide, okay, this is it this time, I'm never going to do it again. And the same thing happens for a few weeks, I don't do it again, and then I'm back in the same place. And you just end up in this vicious cycle. So we need a warrior energy, we need a heroic energy, but for me, it's slightly different. It's a slightly different energy than that, which is for me was a little bit naive, didn't really know myself that well. And the type of energy I've needed to really work on ingrained habits is this virya that doesn't give up, that doesn't turn back, this energy that's really persistent, really determined to change. And eventually we'll get there. Eventually, if we keep working, the habit will get weaker and weaker and weaker, and eventually it will just drop away very easily. But to begin with, you just really need that determination, that heroic warrior virya energy, the Vajra energy. I will defeat it, just this determination. And I was watching Game of Thrones season 5 this week, which is quite violent, very violent. It's not quite violent, it's really violent. It's not for everybody. But there's a character called Samwell Tarly, who's a lot of people won't know, but he's basically a very peaceful, very loyal, very noble character. But he gets picked on, he gets teased. He's very kind of plump, overweight. But he's achieved some remarkable things by season 5. He's already achieved some remarkable things. But in this one episode, his girlfriend is getting attacked by people much stronger than him, and he tells them to stop. He kind of stands up and says to stop, and he gets beaten up, basically. But then he gets up again and tells them to stop, and he gets beaten up again, and then he gets up one last time, just peels himself off the floor, and tells them to stop. And this time, a beast called a direwolf comes and appears in the room and growls at these two attackers. And the direwolf is a kind of mythical being, which is like a bigger, more magical than a normal wolf. And the kind of characters flee. And it's a bit like, for me, the example of the Buddha and Vajrapani just appearing, the determination and the kind of that strength, and that, the Vajrapani appearing. So I thought this morning of Samwell Tarly, Sam Tarly, just peeling himself off the floor and saying no again. And there's a scene in the film of Gandhi where, towards the start of the film, he's trying to burn his passport, his papers, or his kind of caste papers maybe, and he gets beaten by the police, and he peels himself off the floor, tries to do it again, and he keeps getting beaten, and he keeps getting up and trying to do it. And I thought as well of Frodo and Sam in The Lord of the Rings, who just keep getting into difficulty, but they don't give up, they don't turn back, they keep persisting, and eventually they get there. So there's lots of examples, heroic examples in myth and in stories and in real life of people who don't give up, who are persistent. And that's this energy that we need on the Buddhist path. We need the heroic energy to work on our own habits or to transform ourselves. We've got these deeply ingrained habits, but they all will be changed if you keep practicing, just keep trying. Eventually they all will be transformed. Okay, and then there's this second aspect of Vajra energy that I want to talk about, which is Vajrapani is the Dharma Protector, the Dharma Pala, Vajrapani, who stands up for the Buddha, stands up for what he believes in. So this aspect of Virya, of Vajric energy, where we need to speak out sometimes, we need to stand up for what's important in the world around us, in relationships, in situations. We need to put ourselves in scary situations, put our neck above the line and speak out and stand up for things that are important to us, that are valuable to us, to passionately defend our ideals. And Vidanya, I really associate Vidanya with this as being a Dharma Pala, having this, describe Vidanya as like a Dharma warrior who really passionately speaks out for ideals and defends our ideals. So we've got this great principle here of a Dharma economy where we don't charge for classes. And I know that over the years, Vidanya's really had to speak out and really protect that against lots of different influences and just say, no, this is what we're about, we don't charge for classes, this is what we do. And there's lots and lots of different examples, but Vidanya really passionately defend and speak out for ideals. And if you're on the receiving end of it, it can be like Vajrapani. It's kind of awesome. So watch it. Yeah. But at the same time, to observe, to really see it is very inspiring and awesome to see the results of that. Sometimes we need to speak out. Sometimes we need to stand up for principle and for ideals. So for me personally, that's quite a challenge. It has been quite a challenge over the past few years, because when I came to the Buddhist Centre initially, when I arrived at the Buddhist Centre, my approach to life was just to avoid conflict, any conflict whatsoever. So I'd had experiences at school and at home where I learned conflict wasn't good. So basically I didn't like conflict. So my whole strategy to life was just to kind of not rock the boat, keep the peace, just to avoid any kind of conflict really. And I did that in a couple of ways. One is that I basically repressed any experiences of anger that I might have had and just avoided getting into conflict with people in situations. And that worked well for most of my life until I began to meditate actually. And what happened when I began to meditate was that I had this view of myself, which was I don't get angry. I'm not somebody, I didn't even know I was repressing anger. I just thought, I don't get angry. I'm just not angry. I'm quite a chilled out person. I don't get angry. And I kind of comically and tragically, when I first came to the centre, I thought metta was smiling at people. So I went around kind of smiling at everybody, thinking, well, that's what friendliness is. That's what metta means. But really, I just kind of just really out of touch with my emotions. But what happened as I meditated more and more after a few years, I realised actually I was angry a lot of the time, actually, just carrying around loads and loads of anger that had never been expressed. I didn't really know what to do with. Actually quite frightened of it. And then when I was ordained at just shortly after my private ordination, before my public ordination, I just experienced this huge eruption of energy, which I experienced as rage, which I'd never experienced before. Just all this energy that had been blocked suddenly came to the surface of my experience. I was just sitting in meditation, just experiencing rage and anger, and just completely confused, because I was trying to do a kind of meditation on metta and compassion, and what I was experiencing was just rage and anger. And then also frightened and not knowing what to do about it. But very luckily, I was able to speak to my public preceptor called Satyaraja, a really important teacher for me, Satyaraja. And I went for a walk with him and explained what was happening. And he just said a couple of straightforward sentences which were really powerful to me. He said, "You're bigger than you think you are, and you need this energy. This energy is really valuable. You need this energy, and you're bigger than you think you are." So that helped me to kind of think, okay, I don't need to, the wrong thing to do is to try and repress this energy again, to kind of block it away. What I need to do, which we talked about last week, is I need to harness the energy. What Buddhists do. So if you compare the kind of Christian and Buddhist mythology, in Christian mythology, St. George slays a dragon, he kills a dragon. But in Buddhist mythology, the idea is to harness the energy, to kind of ride on the back of the dragon, almost, you might say. I mean, with all the energy, we need all of our energies to become enlightened, to break through, to awaken. So all the different bits of us need to be included, need to be engaged, need to be transformed. So Satyaraja is saying to me, well, you're bigger than you think you are, and you need this energy. I started to feel bigger, actually. I started to feel more of that kind of Vajric energy, more of that kind of presence, more of that, a bit of me starting to kind of appear, starting to emerge, starting to express itself. But I was still frightened of it. I didn't really know what to do, what would happen, what to do with it. But I've given some talks over the past few years about this process, about how to transform anger, how to harness it, how to work with it. So I'm not going to talk in detail at length about it. I'm going to talk briefly, but if you want to know more about it, you could look up on YouTube anger or Vajrapani or transforming anger and refer to some of my earlier talks. But very, very briefly, there's a process for me to harness that energy in meditation and outside of meditation. So in meditation, it starts off with, I'm angry with Fred, for example, just to pick an example. I'm angry with Fred. And then what we can do is kind of unhook all that powerful anger emotion from Fred. And in meditation, just sit with it and experience it. So it becomes not I am angry with Fred, but I am angry. I am angry. So and really feel in meditation where it's safe, other people aren't going to get harmed. What it's like to be angry, actually, just to really feel, experience that. It's painful and it's charged. But it's not about Fred anymore, it's about me being angry. But there's more stages in the process you can go through, which is that it's not I am angry, but me identified with being angry. It's just there is anger, a whole load of anger, and it's really charged in meditation, a whole load of anger. And then there's further processes you can go through, which is it's no longer labelled as anger. There's just a whole load of energy, and it's energy that can be harnessed and used to change things, to break through things, to smash through things, to break obstacles. So very briefly, there's a process you can go through to harness that energy by sitting with it in meditation and unhooking it from the object, from Fred, and in a sense unhooking it from the subject, from me as well. It just becomes a very powerful experience of energy in meditation. And then outside of meditation, we need to begin to harness that energy. We need to start expressing it in a skillful way. So to begin with, it might just be, I talked last week about smashing up logs, basically cutting up, we've got a whole load of wood outside and taking an axe and smashing up wood. It's just a skillful way of expressing that energy. No one's going to get hurt. I'm not going to use it as hatred or anger. I'm not going to blame somebody. It's just discharging that energy, releasing that energy, so it's not pent up and worn up or pent up inside me. Also, exercise can be very good. Just going for a run, going for a jog can kind of help energy that's stuck to shift, to move. But to really start to act as a Dharmapala, what we need to do is to begin to speak out. So when we realise that we are angry about something, the ideal situation, not to speak from a place of anger, but to use that anger as a trigger, as a clue to say, okay, something needs to change here, something that I really care about, that's threatened, something I need to challenge, there's something I need to speak out about here. And ideally we can do that from a place of calm and a place of metta, a place of kindness, but we can speak out, we can defend, we can stand up for what we believe in. So I went through a process of being terrified of doing this and just completely frightened of conflict, to learning gradually how to just be more assertive, to speak out, to stand up for what I believed in. And I really experienced that on the centre team, actually, the first few years of working on the centre team. So the first year, I described my first year on the centre team as basically just saying yes to everything. I kind of just didn't, as far as I remember, it might not be other people's experiences, but this is how I described my first year on the centre team to other people, that I just said yes to everything. But then something inside me, after about a year of doing that, snapped and just said, no, I'm not going to do that anymore. That can't happen anymore. Something kind of just snapped. And I just found I couldn't do that anymore. So I spent the second year saying no to everything, which had much to, they kind of caused a lot of difficulty, a lot of kind of tension, a lot of disharmony. But basically I had to learn how to speak out, how to say no. So I had very patient colleagues who were very understanding with me. And it was a bit messy sometimes. But I spent the second year basically saying no to lots of things. And then maybe after a couple of years of being on the centre team, I started to get the hang of just quite cleanly and in a relaxed way, from a place of metta, saying no, saying that I disagree with something, giving my own opinion, giving it quite strongly at times. And learning to do that with other people who are able to give their opinion very, very strongly. And, from a place of deep love, from a place of harmony and trust. Very, very powerful experience of communication, to really speak the truth, really disagree with each other, and really love each other as well, have real deep harmony. So for me, I've learned gradually how to speak out. So if there's something now that I know is really important, in a sense, I don't care whether people like me or not. It's quite an odd place. When I first came to the Buddhist Centre, I was really frightened about not being liked, about being popular. And now, it's not completely gone, but it's much, much less of an issue. If something needs to be said, I'm very, very happy. It's just very straightforward now to say it to people without fear of being disliked or the consequences. So it's been quite a journey of being able to really speak passionately, but also from a place of metta, to defend important principles, to speak out and defend principles. So we need that. We need also that aspect of energy, of the warrior energy, the virya energy on the Buddhist path. When we start to practice more, to meditate more, we realise how much we care about the truth, how much we care about ethics and morals and values. And we can't help but defend them. We've got to speak out. We have to defend them. But if you start to do that, my experience has been I've really discovered my own voice more and more, and now really know what I think about things. I find it, I've just really discovered my own voice and much more at ease with myself, rather than having all this repressed energy and being out of touch with not speaking out for things. It's a place of much more deeper contentment. Okay. So there's two aspects of virya I've spoken about. One is not turning back, not giving up, never admitting defeat, just never giving up with our habits, our inner habits. And the second is within relationships and situations, speaking out to protect what's valuable. And there's a third aspect of virya that I want to talk about, which is using energy to change what we can around us, making the world better. Using the energy of virya, Vajric energy, to seize the opportunity, seize the initiative, make things happen around us, to make the world a better place, basically. And I really associate this energy with Indian Buddhists, actually. And so there's a very important political figure in the last century in India called Dr. Ambedkar. And Dr. Ambedkar, he, with Gandhi, he was a really learned man, he was probably the best educated man in India at the time. And he wrote the constitution, the Indian constitution. And Dr. Ambedkar was from the lowest caste in the Hindu caste system. He was from what's called the untouchable caste. So untouchable people literally can't be touched, or can't touch people or things or water or food. From people from a higher caste, they have to kind of hide, they can't get jobs, they can't be educated. He was from this lowest caste, but managed, by fortune to be educated in the West, in Europe. He wrote a constitution in India outlawing the caste system, making it illegal to have this kind of prejudice against people. What he realised was that it was like deeply ingrained habits, again, like weeds. They were so deeply ingrained in the kind of collective culture, this way of regarding other people, that he realised that the law wasn't going to change people's behaviour. So he realised what they needed to do was to remove themselves completely from the Hindu religion. So what he decided to do 60 years ago this year, it's the 60th anniversary, he decided to convert to Buddhism, to become a Buddhist, and to leave behind the Hindu religion. And 500,000 followers of Dr. Ambedkar also, at exactly the same evening, converted to Buddhism. So there's this huge mass conversion of 500,000 people converted to Buddhism, this great kind of protest, revolution, statement that we're not going to take this anymore. So kind of great Vajric energy, but using it to change, transform the society, the world around them. And yeah, Sangha Rakshita, the founder of our movement, was friends with Dr. Ambedkar at the time. He was living in India. He was friends with Dr. Ambedkar. Dr. Ambedkar actually asked Sangha Rakshita to perform his conversion ceremony, but Sangha Rakshita passed him to a more senior monk and said this more senior monk should do it. But a few weeks after the conversion, Sangha Rakshita had this gut feeling, this intuition that he had to travel to Nagpur to see Dr. Ambedkar. So he just left his business quite unexpectedly and went straight on a train, went straight to Nagpur. When he arrived, he discovered, tragically, that Dr. Ambedkar had died that day. So he just kind of knew he had a calling, he knew he had to be in Nagpur, he couldn't explain it. And when he arrived, discovered that Dr. Ambedkar had died suddenly. And all these people, all these 500,000 people were distraught. Their leader had died. They felt lost, they felt confused. So all this huge change, social change which had happened was at risk of being lost completely. And Sangha Rakshita used that warrior energy, that heroic energy, just to step in, step up, and do what needed to be done. So people arranged for him to give a talk to 100,000 people in a car park in Nagpur. And he spoke to people and said, well, Dr. Ambedkar's dead, but he will live on through you. If you keep up his work, keep up his activism, if you keep up his practice of Buddhism, Dr. Ambedkar will live on. And then Sangha Rakshita gave a series of, I don't know if it was 100 talks, just loads of talks over the next couple of weeks. He travelled from place to place. He said he didn't hardly sleep. He just gave talk after talk after talk and carried on converting Indian Buddhists. But strangely, he said he had more energy than he just didn't lack for energy. He just felt completely refreshed, full of this energy. He didn't know where it came from. He just had this kind of supernatural energy. So today in modern India, our brothers and sisters in India in the order, in the Triratna order, are continuing the social change, the work of Dr. Ambedkar and his followers. And we had a visitor a few weeks ago called Nagamitra, who is an Indian order member who works in Nagpur, helping this social change. And they've created a university called Nagaloka University, where they educate people. They take young Indian people from all over India, bring them to Nagaloka and educate them in the teachings of Dr. Ambedkar, the teachings of the Buddha, meditation in Pali. And then they go back, and it's like a ripple effect. They go back to India, and the transformation of society continues to happen. So for me, that's just a great example of how we can change the things we can. So we talked about at the start, I talked about Shanti being accepting the things you can't change. So for centuries and centuries, Indian people of the lowest caste had just accepted this was their fate. This was what had to happen to them. But all of a sudden, 60 years ago, they started to change that. They had this heroic energy to change the world around them for the better, to change things. So what about in our society, in our culture? How can we change our society for the better? A few weeks ago, we had a visiting speaker called Vajrapani, who many of you will remember used to work and teach here. And she gave a really inspiring talk just a few days after the referendum result. And she addressed the outbreak of uncertainty, of the rise of hatred, of nationalism. She talked about these things. And I get a sense that at the moment there's quite a bleak outlook in our society, a lot of uncertainty, people are worried, there is a rise of hatred, of violence. And Vajrapani said something quite provocative. She said, well, maybe the revolution will start here, maybe the revolution will begin here, which I found quite exciting, but also quite scary or quite daunting, and also cautious. But for me, I used the metaphor last week of being inspired and using the metaphor of fire, that we can each have a kind of flame of inspiration, a fire of inspiration. When I heard Vajrapani's talk, it kind of really fanned the flames of that fire within me. I felt really inspired. It really reconnected me passionately with my ideals and what I believe passionately about Buddhism, which is that what we're doing will really have a positive effect on the world. What we're doing here collectively can really, really positively transform the world around us. And that now more than ever, the world needs people creating positive mental states, just people who really passionately care about morals and ethics and values, and to creating a community where people can take part in that and be educated in that practice, support each other. So it really kind of reconnected me, really inspired me to think, okay, what we are doing, the world really needs it. The world really needs it. So it's like for me, it was as though we're a sanctuary and a kind of a beacon of positivity, a sanctuary of positivity, of love and of ethical values. And in the same way as Nagaloka University, people can come here, be inspired, and go out and have positive effect in the world. And so it's great to see Mark here, Mark Chip, and over the last few years he's been doing that. He's been engaging with the war in Syria initially, and then the refugee crisis, and he's really taken that on to try and transform the world positively. Other people are doing that. In the last few weeks we had a food bank where we were collecting food for a food bank, and I thought that was a great initiative. I'm really pleased that will be continuing. We'll be collecting food to give to people that really need that. But more than ever, I've really reconnected with a sense of what we're doing here this evening, for me, is the most important thing that we can be doing, just really creating a sanctuary, a haven of positivity, a beacon of positivity where people can engage with, at a time where the world is quite bleak at the moment and there's a lot of despair, a lot of uncertainty. So I want to end by just talking about money, about cash, money as energy. It just occurred to me in the last couple of days that we talk about energy and making things happen, and in a way, money can be seen like that. Money is often seen as being an evil, and it can be used to create a lot of harm and a lot of suffering in the world. But actually, money can make positive things happen. Money can be seen like virya for me. It can be experienced like a flow of energy. So we've got, it's possible to use our money to strengthen, like a Dharma Protector, to strengthen, support what we value, what we believe in, the causes that we believe in, the things that are most important to us. We can put our energy behind them, and if we've got money, we can put our money behind it as well. So we've got this Dharma economy that I mentioned earlier, which is a flow of generosity. Basically, we're trying to see ourselves as a community with this kind of flow of energy, this flow of generosity between us. And that expresses itself in loads of different ways. People volunteer at the centre, people help each other out when they're moving house or when they've got a difficulty. People really put their money behind the project as well, and that gives them a sense of power, I suppose, of just being part of this community. So a couple of years ago, we had a situation where we were faced with a problem, and we presented the Sangha with that problem. We said, well, we realised that we've been really successful at the Buddhist Centre, and our Sangha has doubled in size since we started. The classes are now more than doubled, they're probably more than tripled in size, probably more than quadrupled in size since we started. But we realised that our levels of income had just stayed the same, and the size of our team was the same, and we realised actually we were a bit overwhelmed. We needed more people, we needed a bigger team, and we needed to be able to pay for them. So we were very honest with the Sangha. We said, well, what we need to do is over the next 2 years, we need to double our standing order income. A lot of you will have been around at the time, some of you might not have been. And it's remarkable what happened. Within a few weeks, we'd met our target, we doubled our standing order income. Within the space of a few weeks, people had just really responded. And for me, it was just a real expression. I experienced it as a real expression of love, of people really caring, really feeling passionate about what we do here, and wanting to support that, wanting to put their energy behind that, their money behind that. And at the time, the Sangha Night, it's usually buzzing, but a couple of years ago, the Sangha Night was rocking. It was this really vibrant energy. People visiting from outside could really pick up on it. There's a real energy, a real flow of energy, people really engaged, and something exciting was really happening, which I think we're still experiencing the repercussions of. So yeah, we've got a Sangha where, I don't know, sorry Matty will know the exact numbers, but Maitridasa will, but there's probably 50, 60, 70 people, something like that, who regularly give standing orders that keep the centre going, that pay for us to do the work that we do. 152 people, so that was way, my estimate was way low. Last week, I was talking to somebody about needing blinds in the centre to replace the blinds, and I received an anonymous donation of £3,000 last week to pay for new blinds. So there's just this flow of kind of love, of generosity. It's like it feels like people are really giving strength in that way. So I think money can be seen as being evil or controversial, but actually, for me, it's if it's a flow of money like we have in our community, and a flow of generosity, it's actually very similar to virya, to energy for me. It makes things happen. It can really make things happen. And I was talking to Nagamitra from Nagaloka a few weeks ago, and I discovered that for £200, I could support a young Indian person for a whole year to go on that training course for just £200. So I thought, well, what's remarkable? What a great use of £200. How cheap is that? So I discovered Maitridasa was collecting the funds for Nagamitra. So I thought, yeah, £200 you can change somebody's life like in that way, and change India in that way. So you can have a lot of positive effect if you're fortunate enough to have spare money. You can have a really positive effect with it. Okay. So, yeah. So just to close, really, just to summarise, as Buddhists, it's not about being passive and about being doormats and being meek and serene and calm. There's a place for being serene and a place for being calm. But we need Vajra energy. We need to break through into Buddhahood. If we're going to reach full awakening, we need to smash through all of the obstacles. We need that determination, that warrior determination to never give up, to not be defeated by our habits, and to eventually transform all of them. We need to be a Dharma protector and speak out for what we most believe in, what we're passionate about, and protect it. And we need to use our energy, and if we're lucky to have it, our money, to make the Dharma available to people and to change the world for the better. So may the lotus petals of purity open. May the Vajra wall of determination extend. May the flames that transmute samsara into nirvana